Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds. We got a commander announcement.
Worldfire is unbanned. Golos Tireless Pilgrim is banned. Let's talk about it.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BZ, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. What is going on? Before we tell you, check out the link in the description. TCG Players, where it takes you. Buy the cards, and then with the affiliate link, we get a kickback on the order for free. You don't spend anything. It's amazing.
That's it. Let's get into this video.
Let's do it.
We're going right in. We have a TCG Player link. Worldfire Unbanned. And Golos Ban. Shocker. Woke up this morning, kind of just working on getting our video up. Oh, wait a minute. There's big news for bannings. What is going on? This is shocker. Let's start with the first one. Worldfire is unbanned. BZ, start us off.
Okay, so we checked out the Sheldon article on SCG, which we will link in the description, so you can check it out for yourself. And he justified and talked about what the rules committee was thinking with all this stuff. Couldn't actually get on the website. I wonder if there's too much traffic or if it's broken or something. But anyway, Worldfire's unbanned. They're talking about looking at these, they want 8 and 9 mana spells to be playable in Commander and these big giant things. So they examined this and they said, hey, it's different enough from the other giant game resetters or ender offenders like Sway of the Stars, Biorhythm, and Coalition Victory. So they decided we're going to take Worldfire off of the ban list. And honestly, overall, if I had to say right now whether I'm fine with it or not, I think this is totally fine.
I think it's totally fine, but I think with these cards should have come Sway of the Stars, Biorhythm, and Coalition Victory. They all seem to fit into the same little category. And they made nuance. In the article, which you can go and read using the link in the description, you can read all about how he differentiates this card. I don't think any of that is relevant enough to really say, yes, Worldfire unbanned, other ones stay banned. They could just all be unbanned, and I think that'd be fair.
Yeah, he says the ban list doesn't win the game now cards. And I think I also don't like that about the Commander format in general. Except we already have win the game now cards. So he wanted to kind of specify what the difference is. So he said the extra hoops needed to jump through with Worldfire makes it okay. I'm like, all right, sure. Then he talked about self-regulation is what's going to keep Worldfire off of the table for most games. What do you think about that?
A lot. I think that this is not a point you should or can bring up when talking about a ban list that exists. This means that there shouldn't be a ban list. If this is true, if self-regulation will keep cards away from games they should not be in, there should be zero ban list. You should not. Now, that's not saying that there's no argument for, against, or whatever for a ban list or a non-ban list. It's just saying that this argument in particular completely lends itself to the side of zero, literally zero ban list.
Right. I mean, we look at how many decks Armageddon is in. It's not in that many decks for how good it is. It's one of the best white cards in the format. Mm-hmm. But players just tend to not play it because their vision of the format at least roughly aligns with whatever the rules committee wants for the format. So we can handle Armageddon not being banned. I mean, Worldfire is obviously worse than Armageddon.
Yeah.
Just in general. But so it's all these cards, you could unban every single card in the ban list right now, and they would all generally, for the most part, stay off of Commander tables. It's a weird argument because it's not specific to Worldfire at all. It's true of every card in every format that's made for fun. So it seems like more of an argument for no ban list than to take Worldfire off the ban list.
Before we move on to the next point, I just want to say real quick, my one big problem with the ban list is there seems to be no consistency with it. It seems to really follow no metrics. It just seems to be very, to me, from my point of view, arbitrary.
So they compared Coalition Victory, which is staying on the ban list, to a card that's not on the ban list, Tooth and Nail, which is also another infamous instant win card. So they said there's an important difference, which we'll get to why we don't understand, that let's say you're casting Tooth and Nail Entwined, and you're going to go get Mikaeus Triskelion. They're saying, okay, once Tooth and Nail resolves, there's a spot and a point where players can interact and still not lose to whatever 2-card combo you get. Kiki Jiki, Deceiver Exarch, or some other nonsense. You can respond to something. And they're saying with Coalition Victory, once the spell resolves, you win. Now, that's what the spell says, and I'm going to read this quote to better explain it, and then Joe can say what we think about it. Quote, each of these subsequent actions has a chance to fail, /be countered, /be interacted with at some point along the way, in more ways than just a counterspell. While the chances might be slim depending on the game state, they still exist. Creature removal for the Mikaeus, or Stifle on the Undying trigger, a bounce spell, and so forth. Again, the window is narrow, but it exists for more than that moment. Once Coalition Victory resolves without getting rid of one of the creatures or lands, we're done.
I mean, this again just falls into that arbitrary like line that's being drawn. You can interact and remove the lands or anything while it's on the stack, and then it goes. And it has to be instant speed removal in some way.
Right.
Sure, maybe there's like a few more cards that interact with the tooth and nail combos, but even then, there's still specific combos that aren't that interactable. Then on the other side, we're talking about Coalition Victory, which can just be interacted with in so many different ways. You just have to remove a permanent off the battlefield, and then they spend 7 mana to do nothing.
Yeah, they both have narrow windows that you can respond to, and it stops them in both cases. I don't know what the difference between the spell resolving and then you stop the combo versus the spell's on the stack and you have to stop it now, then it resolves you. And it just seems like the opposite order. And it doesn't seem like it actually changes how much you can interact. They talked about one of the problems with it is, your commanders can be 5 colors, so that's half of the work right there. It's like, well, now your whole, if that's what you're doing, the crux of this spell is just, do you have a removal spell? Because if you do, I wasted my whole turn. Yes. I just don't see I don't know that that's enough of an important difference.
Yes.
It's very weird.
All right, so let's move on now to the second thing that happened today. We have Golos being banned. Whew. I could not disagree with this more. We literally just did a tier list ranking commanders, and we put Golos in poop tier because we think it's a lame commander. We don't think it's very fun, and we don't like it. That being said, I don't think it has any right to be banned.
Yeah, so a couple of their justifications, we can run through it, try to be as fair as possible here. They're saying at low and mid powers, which is how they balance the ban list, we know they don't really take CDH into consideration much, except when they do, but I don't know. They're talking about low to mid powers. A better choice, they're saying Golos is a better choice for all but the most commander-centric decks. And I would basically agree with that. They're saying, like, most commander decks could just throw in some Rainbow Lands and Golos and be stronger. The problem is that's true for almost every commander deck ever. But you can actually look at CDH for this. Adding colors to a commander deck greatly increases how strong it is. Like, it's not even close. You should just play as many colors as you can with reasonable commanders. That's always going to be true. It's just kind of like a weird part of the format and just how things are designed. So players are just going to play what's fun. I want to build a green-white Tristani deck, so I'm going to play Tristani. I'm not going to build a 5-color Kenrith deck so that I can play all the best token cards ever.
Yeah, this lends itself to the same exact thing we were saying before, that Golos, just because of the exact reason for unbanning Wildfire, that being that it'll stay away from the tables because people self-regulate. It's the same thing with Golos. Golos will stay away from the tables people don't want to see it at because of self-regulation. It's the same argument. So you using the argument to unban things and then banning something, I don't understand it.
Yeah, so he's the most popular commander of all time,
yes.
which is very interesting. I mean, that is a little bit of testament to he's not staying away from tables in some sense. I mean, he's at a lot of them.
That's fair.
So they're saying this one stands out among all the 5-color commanders because in my head they all have the same every 5-color commander can just be put at the helm of any commander deck and make it better for the most part. But they're talking about one of the things that makes him stand out is that he costs 5 colorless, and you don't even need Wooburg to cast him. Well, what about Kenrith? Kenrith's a better card. It only costs white. So, like, I'm not sure what the difference there is. I would be inclined to ask.
Well, again, it came down to like a few distinctions. Like, reduces the commander tax by 1. Basically, its tax is always 1 because it's church settled land. This just sounds exactly like and I'm using this word again, arbitrary. There are commanders that don't have tax. There are commanders that can reduce past tax, like Carador.
Yeah.
I just don't even think that's even close to relevant for the conversation, and it being brought up is confusing to me.
It does confuse me a little bit because it is true, and it is what makes the card, like, part of what makes the card so good. Except that we know that's not a criteria. I mean, reducing the commander tax by 1 or 0, like, Yuriko has no tax, ever. Derevi has no tax, ever. Carador basically has no tax. I don't know if I've ever paid commander tax in that card, maybe like 5% of the time.
Yeah.
It's just not it's not something that I thought ever contributed to whether a card is banned or not.
I don't think it does, and I don't think it did, and I just think I think they were trying to push more reasons, just like, hey, this is really the reason. We have a lot of reasons, and they do have a lot of reasons. I just don't think a lot of them are good.
Yeah, okay, so they talked to Wizards about making less Goloses in the future, and that was around a couple years ago, so we've started to see less Goloses. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think Golos is like great for the format or anything, but it's just a little weird. We're talking about this next point. I guess was one I really wanted to make.
Yes.
Players, we can look at the philosophy for the format. Players have bonds with their cards, and banning them disrupts that bond. That's what the rules committee has said about Commander. I think it's still on the site if you go check it if it's working. Banning the most popular commander of all time definitely is going to sever more bonds than almost any banning I could think of. So they're saying they're okay with people being unhappy if it's for the health of the format. They basically said that exactly in the article. Shouldn't this lead to more bans?
You would think, but they seem to be very against bans, which I'm not for or against bans either way. I'm just for consistency. I love the extremes. I love the idea of a no ban list or the idea of a strict ban list. This in-between ground just seems to be confusing, and really the waters are so muddy.
Yeah, it's going to lead to so many, you get the memes of, and I'm not accusing Sheldon of this, but there's so many memes of like, Sheldon just bans the cards he loses against, and I mean, maybe to the outside eye it looks like that. I don't know. I mean, we just get to this, like, we have no idea what is going on, and they're telling us exactly what's going on. It's really weird, where nobody can pin down what's going to happen. Nobody on planet Earth had predicted the Worldfire Unbanned Golos banning.
How could you? How could you ever? And I think that might speak a little bit to maybe transparency from the rules committee, and
or the CAG.
Or the CAG. I mean, maybe, but I don't actually know. It's so weird that this came out of so far to left field. It's crazy.
I mean, when you ask me what are the most problematic cards in the format, I'm going to say like Necropotence, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, to a lesser extent Serra Ascendant, just because it doesn't gel with like what the format's rules are. And like those are the cards I'm always considering and I have in the back of my head. And even like, more ridiculous like unfun stuff like Cyclonic Rift people have talked about in the past. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, get Worldfire out of here. Get Biorhythm unbanned. Get Sway of the Stars unbanned. It's fine. None of it's worse than Armageddon, and I've played against it, and it's fine. Like, you don't have to play against it. You never have to play against those cards. You can just say, I'm not looking to play that kind of game, and your friends will 100% accommodate you, and your random strangers at an LGS, you're not going to lose points you're not going to lose anything by not playing with them.
Agreed.
Before we end, just want to say, I don't have any ill will towards the Commander Rules Committee. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I just disagree with these decisions a little bit. I like the Worldfire unbanning. I mean, there's just a little bit of the behind the scenes why the other cards are staying banned. That is a little confusing. And then we obviously don't care for the Golos ban much.
Yes, it feels to me like there's not consistency, and that's where I tend to disagree with you. Obviously, no hate from us, but
yeah. You have a difficult job.
Yeah. Yes. That is our video. Special shout outs to all of our really, really fast scrolling patrons. Right now, can you see your name? Because we're moving really fast. Because I'm about to say, peace out, Tribe Scout.